Hey y'all, Katie here with Mom Nation, and welcome to another episode of Our Love Story. We know being in a relationship is hard, so Dyanna Isel, certified couples counselor, and I talk through different tips and tricks to help you navigate your relationship and get through everyday life. While you're here on your favorite podcast platform, please subscribe to our channel. Or if you'd like to visit us on YouTube and watch the video, our handle is Mom Nation USA. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, we are back with another awesome episode of Our Love Story Q&A with a couples counselor, and we are here with certified couples counselor Dyanna Isel. Hello, Dyanna.
Hi.
Here we are again. I love talking with you. It seems crazy that it's already been a month, but hey, you know, the older we get, the faster time flies. Like, why is that? What's up with that?
I don't know, but you know what? Had I known that this is what adulting was going to be like, I would have fought far less naps and eaten way more snacks when I was a kid, but that's just me.
No kidding. I would have fought it every step of the way. In fact, I'd still be a kid if I had that opportunity.
Taking way more of those naps.
Right? The things they don't know until they get older.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Before we jump into today's topic, guys, I just want to do a little shout out to my friends over at Top Notch Landscaping. They are here in the Phoenix, Arizona area. If you don't know, Mom Nation started in the Phoenix, Arizona area. We are in other states across the country, but Phoenix, Arizona is our hometown. So big shout out to Top Notch Landscaping. They are a licensed, bonded, and insured landscape contractor that can handle all of your landscaping needs, from new designs and landscape renovations to tree care, irrigation services, and cleanups, working one client at a time to provide each homeowner with the time and attention they deserve. And in fact, they work with me too, so I can attest. Connect with them at topnotchlandscapingllc.com. All right, Dyanna, so like we always do, I have a post that came out, within the last couple of weeks or so in the Mom Nation Arizona group. I'm going to share that, read it off to you, which is especially helpful to those that are out there listening to only the audio version. And then let's talk through these layers. So this post, like I said, came out a couple of weeks ago. It reached 4,100 people or some odd, somewhere around there. So there was quite a conversation. I believe there was 80 comments or something on this post. So quite a conversation happening here. Here it goes. Hi, mamas. Please talk me down from my frustration. My mother-in-law just stayed with us for 10 days. She wanted to come and spend time with our kids during fall break. Great. She also came the weekend before, so my hubby and I could attend my friend's wedding and stay at the venue. We were very appreciative and all went well. We have always had a good relationship. The entire past week, she has literally sat on her iPad or phone all day. My boys, I can't read because my camera's in the way. Sorry. My boys apparently had a system set up while we were gone for the wedding to decide who got so much time on her iPad. They were completely obsessed with it, to the point I had to say multiple times, guys, you know we don't do iPads before 9 a.m. or after 7 p.m. I had to constantly repeat myself all week. I work outside the home and was gone for large chunks of time, but I know it was still a thing. She left today and my husband took her to the airport. She commented, "I think your wife hates me." He asked why. She responded with the fact that I would comment about screen time. She didn't understand why it was a problem and thought I was overreacting when she was just trying to spend time with her grandkids. She lives with my sister-in-law and neither of them work. They just hang out all day while my nephew is in school. Meanwhile, our house is go, go, go with 3 kids and my hubby and I are both working. Sorry, not sorry. We don't just sit and play on electronics all day. Ugh, please, please talk me down. I already am the parent that hardly allows screen time because my husband is more lax about it. So this situation validates his belief that I'm too strict about it. What say you, Dyanna? Boy, oh boy, there's some layers in here.
There are some layers in here. I think the first one that really sticks out to me is kind of what was said in that very last sentence or two, is validating my husband's position that I'm too strict about screen time. So that leads me to believe that maybe there hasn't been enough communication about expectations of electronic usage in the home and come to some sort of compromise, right? So if it's validating, quote unquote, his position for being too strict, that sounds sort of judgy, sort of contemptuous to me, and suggests that there's, again, some room for some compromise. So it does appear that there's some misalignment perhaps in like values of how do we come to some sort of compromise on how our kids spend time on electronics, what type of electronics can they engage in, for how long, how important is it that we let them get on electronics, or how important is it that we don't get on electronics? So there's definitely a big gap there, it seems like, in the values alignment and what electronics serves in their home and what kind of role that is in their home.
Totally agree. And I feel like, and maybe this isn't the case for this particular mama, but I feel like oftentimes things change with our kids so rapidly as they get older and they're exposed to new and different things, where it's almost like you constantly have to have that parent sit down. You constantly have to say, okay, we're in a new world, we're in a new age, you know, it's a new year. Here's what our kid's going to be experiencing. How do we feel about that? And how can we come together on that? And I wonder if there wasn't an actual solid conversation about this.
Yeah, totally. As our kids get older, we sort of have to pivot and adjust our own parenting styles and techniques a little bit just based on the needs of the kid, because what's going to work when the kid is like 6, 7, or 8 is not going to work when they're a teenager, right? When they're 6 or 7, you can say like, okay, so your consequence is, you know, no electronics today. But when they get to be a teenager, that's not going to work anymore. And that's not going to be the thing. As they become teenagers, they've got to be given a little bit more agency in terms of those things. But it does seem like in this case, I don't know how old the kids are, but electronics serve as a way for kids to, you know, sometimes socialize depending on what the parents feel like is appropriate, whether it's like, you know, Roblox, Minecraft, those sorts of games, which certainly do come with their own safety concerns, which is why this conversation is so important between parents, right? Like what's okay, what's not okay, you know, how much are we overseeing of what's happening, you know, those types of things. But sure, as they grow up, age appropriate conversations have to be happening in terms of age appropriate in the way of like, okay, so what's cool when they're 5 or 6, maybe watching 30 minutes of, you know, some little kid show, learning show or whatever, versus when they're 10, 11, and 12, you know, other things are cool. Other things are being talked about at school in terms of games and, you know, maybe different platforms that are really popular that kids can connect on. Those things start to become more important. So things that are important in their world have to be a topic of conversation with the parents if they want to continue to, you know, meet the kid where they're at, while also still being true to what their parenting style is or what their values are. Those things constantly have to pivot and adjust as they get older.
Yeah. And I feel like, you know, it may be every time you turn around. It may be several times in one, you know, school year, just because things are, I mean, I have an 8-year-old, I think you know that, and things are happening so quickly and coming at him so rapidly, and his interests are changing, and he's so intrigued about all the new things. I feel like it's almost a weekly basis that my husband and I sit down and we're like, okay, here's the new subject on the table. And, you know, how do you feel about it? And here's, I have this really cool perspective, and my husband like kind of hates it because I can come to the table and I can say, well, because I have Mom Nation, right? And I'm constantly in there and I'm constantly talking with all the ladies in there. And I'm like, well, here's what the moms are saying this week, you know? And so he's like, dang it, I need some moms too. so I can keep up to speed on what's going on. But it's true, right? Like, we learn from each other in this community that we have grown together. And I personally look at that as a huge, huge win in my life, because I feel like I'm learning things from other people that, you know, some other moms that maybe aren't quite as connected aren't learning. And they're maybe learning it the hard way when unfortunately tragedy does happen, or, you know, something happens that's huge and potentially devastating. So I feel very lucky in that respect. But again, I'm having this conversation almost every time I turn around. It's crazy how quickly things change when they're, you know, going through school, and just even in this day and age of technology.
Absolutely. Part of parenthood is like trying some things on for size, right? Like seeing how this feels and seeing how this works and seeing how kids respond to this and how we feel about that. And, it's not inconsequential to mention, 2020 and COVID and the effect the pandemic has had on everybody. And, again, it's not inconsequential to consider how much were our kids on electronics because of school during 2020 and parts of 2021.
Yeah.
How they connected with people was, Zoom or whatever their classrooms were using, and also playing games online. Parents that were working from home, their kids were at home. There is absolutely zero judgment and entertaining your kids with an iPad or TV for a while so you can get your work done. We had to learn in 2020 how to do both at the same time. We had to learn how to be there for our kids and take care of our kids, but also get our work done so that we had a job and that we could continue to provide for our kids. So we're in a different age than obviously when we were younger, right? Because electronics and social media, that stuff wasn't really around.
Right.
Now it's around, but not only is around, but it was all they had for a year and a half to connect with their friends. Teenagers that had no other way other than perhaps Snapchat or Instagram messaging or any of those things to connect with their friends. So now when we go forward and we try to say, oh, wait, no, now we don't need it as much anymore. It's so deeply ingrained in how it fulfilled a need for them. It met them where they were and fulfilled a need that they had to socialize and to be involved and to be part of something that has formed so much of where our kids are today. So we really have to take that into consideration too, when we're putting these restrictions, which I think are totally appropriate, by the way, putting restrictions on electronics and things like that, like looking at the role that they play in our kids' lives now.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And even, I know that every school is different, or every district or whatever is different, or, depending on what type of school that you go to, it could be very different. But I know that in my kids' school, they're on electronics a lot. So they're doing math work on electronics, which is kind of cool because it what am I looking for? It like gauges their amount of time that they're taking on a problem. So we can get like statistical data from it, which is kind of cool, right? That we never could have before necessarily, or as in depth, or as, custom to every child. So like my kid is on they gave him a little laptop. He's in the 3rd grade. They gave him a little laptop, and that's just very, very normal for him. Mm-hmm. And so we have, our screen time rules that Dad and I have agreed upon. And I know it's a little bit different in this case that we're talking about, particularly because it was on the grandma's iPad, it was on the grandma's phone. Mm-hmm. But my son does have an iPad, and we set, I don't know if all you parents out there know you can do this, but we set the time limitations on that. So we've got parental controls on his iPad, and it shuts off at a certain time. So he can't go sneak it at night while we think he's sleeping or whatever. And it also shuts down after a certain amount of time. So, if I think he's playing Legos and I'm, like you said, getting some work done because I'm a parent and that's what I do and I have to do it in order for my family to survive, then he's not just sitting on his iPad for an extended amount of time. So there are different things that you can do as a parent to kind of control that once you decide, what those expectations are.
Yeah. Yeah. So to sort of bring that back to the post, we talked about, the purpose that electronics serve in the house, how much our kids are on it. Also, what does our rest expectations look like for all of our family members, right? So like in the immediate family, like, mom or dad, we might just, plop on the couch and go on our Instagram after working a long day while we're watching TV, because that's what we do to unwind or decompress or those things. Not always, but it's pretty common, right? That's what we do. Right. But if we have way different expectations for what our kids are doing to rest and relax, maybe that's a point of conversation with our partner to get aligned on, like, what does rest look like for them? Can we expect them to completely be unplugged and do all of the quote unquote kid things when we're sitting here doing the exact opposite in the name of being an adult and because I can, what I mean?
Yeah. And at some point I feel like, and you tell me, like, maybe it's younger than what I think, but at some point that's going to start to build a bit of resentment in their minds, right? Like,
sure. Why is it okay for you and not for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's definitely, part of the conversation that, this couple can certainly have is like, what does rest look like? And what are the expectations around that for the kids? We've visited this topic before, boundaries with in-laws, right? So
The
it
B
sounds
word.
like it's that B word, right? And it's not the 5-letter one. So this in particular, mother-in-law is certainly, it sounds like heard the boundary perhaps, but just chose not to do that in the name of we are spending time together. So to me, that sounds a lot like, let me just make up a reason for why I'm stomping all over your boundaries, which is really unfortunate, right? Because it does sound like they have a good relationship otherwise, but this can certainly be a very effective way to erode a really good relationship between her and her mother-in-law. So setting those boundaries, as we discussed before, can be very tricky, very uncomfortable. But in this case, she's going to need her husband's help. And based on that very last little statement at the end that stuck out to me, it sounds like there's the potential for some triangulation happening here. So what I mean by triangulation is that there's 3 people involved in this particular system and not just 2. You can see triangulation happening in this situation with the poster herself, the husband, and now the mother-in-law, because the mother-in-law is imposing her thoughts, her opinions, her beliefs on parenting, and kind of agreeing, for lack of a better word, with the husbands. So there's the 2 of them, and then we've got the poster herself in there. So now there's 3 people as the parents, when that is not the business. Like we don't want that happening in the relationship at all. You can see triangulation happening sometimes with kids when parents are overly involving their kids in parental decisions. You can see triangulation happening in a variety of ways, but in this particular situation, it seems like the mother-in-law has been brought into the triangle. So what does that mean for the poster? Well, it sounds like, again, a communication has to be had with her husband regarding like, what are boundaries and expectations around electronics, but also like communication with mother-in-law. She doesn't get to decide how we parent our kids. And if you and I disagree on something, then you and I need to have that conversation, and we need to find some sort of compromise without your mom being looped into it, because guaranteed that's going to build a lot of resentment for this poster, and is going to make her feel like her needs aren't important or wanted, or they might be inconvenient in some way. So that's certainly going to cause more dynamic destruction between the couple themselves if they can't come to an agreement on what that mother-in-law boundary should look like, as uncomfortable as it might be.
Yeah. And I don't know, you tell me your opinion, but I feel like the response from the mother-in-law is a little immature. Like, oh, she doesn't like me. It's like me being in school and failing in a class because my teacher doesn't like me. You know what I mean? And that being my excuse.
It's sort of a almost like a victim mentality there, by personalizing a decision that the mother-in-law made that the poster didn't like, right? Like, yes, it's something that she did, but she chose to take it to that level by personalizing it and victimizing herself in it, as opposed to taking accountability and saying, so I think I upset your wife with the whole screen time issue. I think this is probably a conversation I have to have with her. That wasn't my intention to upset her, or, XYZ, whatever the conversation might be, but some sort of accountability. In this case, that's by using that statement, there really isn't any accountability. Furthermore, I'd be very curious what the husband's response was to mom when she said that, when I don't think your wife likes me. Like, I'd be very curious, like, what did he say to that?
Yeah.
Did he shut that down right there? Or did he say, well, I don't know? Or like, what did he say? Because I feel like his response is really important to the aforementioned topic of boundary setting and triangulation.
Totally agree. So, I wish we did know, like, did he respond in a manner that is agreeing with her? So now they're kind of like ganging up on the poster, or did he, come to bat and say, hey, we just do things maybe differently than what you would or what you think, and these are our rules, and here are the reasons why we have the rules in place, and we expect you to respect them when you're in our home and when you're with our kids. I feel like that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, it's nice to provide a reason why, but ultimately you don't have to. Those are your boundaries. Those are your rules. Those are your kids. You get to decide how you see fit in terms of parenting decisions. It's mother-in-law's choice, and every other family member is their choice to either go with the program or not. It's not their job to like it, to understand it. None of that. That's not their job. Their job is to follow through and respect those boundaries.
Totally agree. So where do we go from here? Like, what is, what's the next step of, again, we don't know who this poster is. We don't really know the dynamics, what has happened since.
Yeah.
But in an ideal situation, where do we go from here?
So I think what I would really encourage the poster to do is to sit down with her husband and talk about a couple of things. One, let's talk about what electronic expectations are in this house. What feels reasonable? So let's set some limits that we can both agree on every day, that you agree to enforce, I agree to enforce. That's what we agree on. I feel like that's super, super, super important. Secondly, I would also include in that conversation, like, what was your response to your mom when she said that?
Yeah.
And kind of gauge from there, like what direction that conversation is going to go in, whether it's, I feel that maybe your mom has too much of a position in the conflicts or the agreements that you and I have as parents. I feel like her position is ill-placed and needs to be rearranged or moved or removed. And talking about values and talking about respect and respecting each other's positions on things and respecting each other's boundaries with their family. So let's agree on what's a fair boundary in terms of electronics when mother-in-law is visiting. Do we agree that maybe the kids will have an hour extra electronics time or something when she's here? Okay, fine. Or maybe it's not. But you guys have to agree on what that looks like and agree that mother-in-law does not have a position to make those decisions for you, whether you are present or not. And if she continues to go beyond what the boundary is, what is that conversation going to look like? And does her husband have her back? Is ultimately a really important question.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Another thing that I'm kind of pulling out of this post, I'm not sure if there was a conversation with the mother-in-law before, like, hey, you're in the house now. Cool. Here's what our rules are, just so that you know. It sounds like, again, I don't know the details, but it sounds like maybe that wasn't established. And then so she didn't know and she just did her thing. But there were some conversations coming up from the poster. Hey guys, we don't do that. And isn't really direct to me.
Sure. Yeah, it does seem like, and again, we only have a little snapshot of it, but some of it was reactive, right? Is like noticing like, oh no, like these kids are on electronics way more than I'm comfortable with. So let's go ahead and try to reel them in or reel the kids in on their electronics time without going straight to mother-in-law and saying, listen, I appreciate you're letting the kiddos use your iPad while you're here, but I feel most comfortable with this amount of time of electronics per day. So I appreciate, if you help me enforce that when I'm not here. So it is very unclear in this post if she did directly address the mother-in-law or not. And that goes back to having clear expectations and boundaries. If they aren't clear from the get-go and that person violates them, it's really not entirely that person's fault. It's the person who has the expectation, the boundaries that maybe didn't clearly communicate them.
Right. Because kids, it's their grandmother. It's another adult. Kids aren't going to be, you know what, Grammy? Mom doesn't allow this. They're going to be like, sweet, it's an adult letting me do this. Exactly, right? I mean, what kid, I guarantee if my child was in that position, he'd be all for it. He would not tell his grandmother crap about what our rules are. He'd be like, it's different. Grandma's here,
Yeah, absolutely.
So it does sound like everybody needs to have a conversation. Now, of course, depending on the dynamic of the situation, would you suggest that the three of them sit down and have this conversation? Would you suggest, because it's hubby's mom, he kind of takes the reins on that? Or like, what do you typically see that works best in these situations?
Yeah, I'm not sure having the three of them sit down at this point would necessarily be needed, only because the poster did indicate that they had a good relationship prior to this. So it doesn't seem like there's this like underlying tension or discomfort with talking to her about it. I think the conversation right now really needs to occur between the poster and her husband and coming to agreements on what this looks like. And then the next time mother-in-law comes to visit, one or both of them, whoever's there, just like, hey, so these are our expectations in terms of electronics. This is how many hours a day they're allowed to be on them. We appreciate, again, you helping us enforce that. But beyond that, everything is going to just have to be, you know, as it happens in terms of behavior with mother-in-law. Something else comes up, you know, and the poster and her husband need to come back together again and say, okay, how do we handle this particular situation? But it seems like, again, since the poster said she has a good relationship with mother-in-law, I'm not sure like an entire sit down with the mother-in-law right now is necessary. I think this really just has to come from the root, which is the poster and her husband.
Yeah, totally agree. Anything else that you pulled out of that you think is important to bring to light?
I think that the poster's frustration is super valid. And when you feel like things are completely out of your control in some way, shape, or form when it comes to your kids, it's totally expected that you're going to be reactive and that you're going to be upset. And it's totally valid that you're feeling upset, that you feel like your feelings are being dismissed or undervalued, or that it's not worth, you know, the conversation or worth the trouble. But everything that you're saying is real, it's valid, it's important, it's worth having a conversation about, and you deserve to be heard.
Totally agree. Thank you, Dyanna. You're amazing. You just like lay it out so easy to understand. And I love when you use the words from, you know, I'm sure you use these words all day long in your practice, but I love it when you just kind of explain that, because some of us don't know what triangulation is and all of that.
Of course, it's meant to be, you know, it's meant to be something that you can practice and understand on your own. It's not about making things more confusing than normal, but it does help to have a term to connect to, like, oh, that's what that's called. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got it. Exactly. That way you can kind of like describe it, right? And yeah, we definitely don't need less clarity and more stress in the world that we live in. That's for sure. So
totally agree.
thank you for being our clear, non-stress person with wisdom that we can come to. I appreciate you ever so much. And for those of you out there that want to connect with Dyanna, where's the best place to do that? How can they do that?
Absolutely. You can reach me on Instagram or Facebook, Dyanna Eisel Therapy LLC, or you can go straight to my website. It's DyannaEiselTherapy.com, and you can even schedule a free 15-minute consultation.
Awesome. And are you doing, I may have already asked you this, but I forgot. Are you doing online consultations? Because of course, this show is broadcast across the country and world, really. I mean, we're across the world, Dyanna. We have people in other countries that follow our podcast. I'm so excited about it. So can you speak with somebody abroad or in another state, or do they need to be here?
So it's, to answer your first question, consultations are done on the phone. They're 15 minutes and they are done on the phone. In terms of being out of state or out of the country, I am held to the standards of that state's board, which means if I'm going to be seeing someone for couples or individual counseling, they have to be a resident of Arizona, because that's where my license is.
Gotcha. Do you have a network, if somebody were to come to you, that you could advise
Absolutely.
that they chat with if they're from like New York and you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. 100%. I can always provide referrals.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. And I appreciate all of you being here, all of you listeners out there. You are the reason why we do this on a monthly basis, why we keep having the wonderful Dyanna back. And if you are interested in any of the previous shows that we have done, hop on over to our YouTube channel. Our handle is Mom Nation USA. And you can just scroll down just a little tiny bit on that homepage, and you will see the playlist for our Love Story Q&A with a Couples Counselor. You will see all of our previous shows. And hey, check out some of the other playlists while you're there as well. If you are the listening type and you just like the audio version, then you might be on it right now on your favorite podcast platform. Do a search for Mom Nation Talk Radio and click on the notification bell or button or whatever it is on that platform. So that way you're notified when we have new shows, because we are constantly putting new shows out there, all different topics. Dyanna's once a month, but we've got a bunch of other stuff too. So check us out there, like us, follow us. We really want to get this information out to the mamas that need to hear it. So
absolutely.
Thanks again, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.